It's 5 o'clock. A very good evening to one and all present. Welcome to a brand new episode of View TV by Vijay Bhumi. This is a series that I look forward to on a weekly basis that we call Educators Speak, where we're joined by eminent educators and we talk to them about all trending topics and contemporary topics related to education. Thankfully for us, right now we're in a phase where we are opening up schools where, students are going to go back to schools, go back to their friends, go back to their teachers, be back in their comfortable surroundings, which we have been wanting for a very long time. And while we speak, a lot of residential schools have also opened up. So we were running a poll on our social media, just trying to get a feel of how people feel about residential schools and boarding schools. And oh my God, there were so many myths that were attached to it. There were so many stereotypical, I'd say, notions attached to it that, how a day school is a lot better than a residential school. And how, if a parent is sending a child to a residential school, how in a way it kind of reflects poorly on the time they are able to give to the child, and all kinds of these myths. So while we were reading this, we thought that, this is something that we should address, because as a channel we believe that we want to address topics where all these myths need to be debunked. We also wanted to talk about how residential schools are opening up in a very safe manner right now post the pandemic, keeping all the precautions in mind. And while we were thinking of who to invite for this very special conversation, the one name that popped up in my mind was Archana Mankotia ma'am, who is the principal of the MGD School Jaipur. And as we know, it's one of the leading schools in India today, one of the oldest, leading, has a rich heritage, rich legacy, very well known as one of the best boarding schools that we also have in the country today. So who better than her to debunk this myth? Who better than her to actually tell us that how are residential schools coping up, with any new challenges that are being thrown by the post-pandemic phase, and how they are addressing it and ensuring the safety of their girls. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking out time this evening to join us. It's so lovely to have you back on our channel again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kritika, for inviting me.
I'm so happy, ma'am, that you could make it. And without further ado, let's just deep dive into this conversation. I'm sure all the people who have joined us already, they also have a lot of questions that they'd like to ask. So all my viewers know the drill. Please send us your questions in the chat box or on our social media platforms. We're going to pick this up and integrate this in our conversation with Archana ma'am. So let's deep dive. Let's hear from her experience as an educator. Firstly, ma'am, I'd like to know from you, is there a change in perspective of students and parents towards residential schools in the post-pandemic phase? Because this was something that we kept hearing, on social media, but we want to actually know what is the reality on the ground today.
Kritika, thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. I hope my audio is clear.
Absolutely, ma'am. We can see you and hear you very clearly.
Thank you. So, see, residential schools carry a certain kind of impression in the minds of the people, and it differs from person to person, obviously. What residential schools were thought of before, during, and after pandemic, there has been a slight change. I will not talk about the fee part of it, because obviously when you talk of residential schools, you also talk of people who can afford to pay. So let's not talk of the money part, because that also came into the factor due to corona. Otherwise, obviously people who opt for residential schools obviously know that they can afford to pay that fee. So fee is a different issue, but in other terms, what I felt was that the impression towards residential schools when the pandemic started, it was from doubts, fear, confusion, and finally to a kind of a resignation and acceptance of the fact that residential schools, in effect, would be good and safe and secure for the students. So I will just elaborate, because suddenly when everything happened, of course, all of us, each one of us was confused about what has happened. Suddenly lockdown happened. There were girls in the hostel at that time when it was announced that, such and such date, everything will be closed. So we had just 2 days time to move the girls back safely to their homes, which we did. And obviously, during that time, there was fear, and parents did not want to send the girls back even after the lockdown opened. And a lot of time went by that way. So it was all along, it was the fear that how will now they get back to the hostel and how will things pan out now. But as we moved into the lockdown phase, second lockdown, then moved into the little that little time span where we opened up, and then the second phase. By then, I think all of us, and especially residential schools, we had got our act together. We had geared up to face this challenge, and we had made the entire campus into a bio bubble through proper sanitization, proper procedures, proper SOPs, and proper protocols being followed as per the COVID requirements. So gradually, parents over a time period realized that being in the hostel, being once they are inside the hostel, once they are in the campus, and after they have gone through the proper observation quarantine procedures, they are safer in there, and they are not missing out on any of their activity because they are studying, their activities would be conducted, sports will be there, and socializing also happens, interpersonal skills also being developed. So there's a complete development happening, which is what got hampered during the pandemic. So this was an important thing. It was not an overnight thing which in the residential schools for the parents who have been wanting to send their children to residential schools. So I think that is the subtle change which has happened.
I think that's very, very well put, ma'am. And I'm so happy to hear, I mean, the kind of concern and the proactiveness that MGD School Jaipur has shown. I mean, I can't even imagine because, we had students in college hostels as well when it was such a harrowing task to ensure that, they get back safely as soon as the lockdown was announced. And I think we definitely resonate with you on this factor that when we wanted to open up the institution physically and welcome back students, there was this resistance, there was this fear. But I think over a period
Yeah.
of time, once you keep the dialogue open and reassure the parents in terms of the SOPs that you have and the safety protocols you have, which I must say to our viewers who are joining us who may not come from residential school setups, is a Herculean task, because creating that bubble, maintaining that bubble, ensuring you have adequate facilities in place in case you are to have an untoward breakout in your campus is something which needs a lot of meticulous planning. So I'm so happy to hear that MGD has gone far and beyond to make sure that all the girls are comfortable and they can comfortably come back to campus and resume physical school to ensure that their education and extracurricular activities remain uninterrupted. So while I mean you have briefly touched upon some of the operational challenges that you have faced, if we could talk about it in a little more detail, that what are the major operational challenges that you feel residential schools are facing currently? Because today, in our viewers, we are joined by fellow educators, and I'm sure we can all learn from each other what you have been doing, what have you done to solve the problem, which others may also want to implement in their ecosystem today.
So, Kritika, as we just discussed, when you create a bio bubble, you can control the factors within your power, or within the campus, you can control all the factors of who's coming, going, what's happening, how many children, where, activities, everything. But you can't be an isolated person in a city because there are people coming in and out, in the entering the campus, going out of the campus, and there are other kinds of requirement. So the major operational challenge comes when we have to, when teachers or some students who are coming from outside. So how do we control that? And that, of course, the standard operating procedures are taken care of, that they have been the elders have been vaccinated. Of course, that of course goes without saying. Now all the elders have been vaccinated. For children, when they get in, first of all, they should go through an RT-PCR test that should show negative. Then we observe them for 2 days. We keep them separately, and then they are put together in the dormitories. But even so, they are always constantly told to keep a little distance and to wear masks at most of the times. It can't be every time, because then they go for games. In the dining hall also, we have social distancing. We've started with physical activity, whereas where the close proximity games are not being played. It's like in more of individual exercises and yoga and meditation and aerobics and other things. We also have a mix of day scholars. So now, to have common classes with the boarders and the day scholars, for few days we keep the boarders away from the day scholars, but gradually we have to make them sit together. Again, following the protocols of social distancing and constant, like hand washing and sanitization and wearing a mask. So all these are operational challenges which we have already gone through, and I think we are all very comfortable. What I'm happy about is that the children are now very much aware that they have to take care of themselves, and they know that safety lies in following the basic protocols. Even vaccination may not help, but if you follow the three main things of wearing a mask, keeping distance, and sanitizing your hands, that is where the safety lies. So I feel, apart from setting up the entire bio bubble and apart from putting systems in place to be safe, the most important part is that the children have realized that they have to be careful. And as elders, like teachers and parents, we also have to make them feel responsible for their own safety. We cannot, some parents keep on saying, ma'am, ye to bacche hain, inko kya? But they may be bachas, but 1.5 years of all this news about corona, they've become quite wise to understand that they should be careful and they need to follow certain norms. So if we make them feel responsible, they only tell you, ma'am, if suppose my mask is down, they will tell me, ma'am, please put up your mask, because it's so much ingrained in them. So that is why I feel we have to treat our children as more responsible people, and together then all these challenges can be taken care of.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think we totally agree with you. I think even this has been the personal experience of many people here, that we see that, children are probably more cautious than the adults about, washing your hands, about constant sanitization, about wearing the mask. So definitely that is something that inspires confidence in us, that, even if students were to go to school, they are more well aware of safety protocols when it comes to COVID. Now, I think I'd like to come to the second part of my topic, which I started with, which is that there's so many myths, and I'm sure in your long career as an educator, you've heard so many of them, and the school has debunked so many of them with the fantastic results that they've always had. So, if I had to ask you that, what are the three most popular myths that exist around residential schools that you would like to debunk today on this platform?
Ritika, that's a very interesting question. And in fact, I would like to know from you what are the myths, because I am in the residential school. You are the outside person. So what do you hear about the residential school that you feel that, it needs to be explained? So while I tell my points, the things that I know about, I would ask you also that you tell me, so that I can clear the cobwebs on those issues. So one thing which I feel this is all conversationals. Time, that's why they send their children to the boarding school, and the family ties are broken, or the connect with the family members no longer exists, which I feel is it's I mean it's quite, in fact, silly to say such things, because it's not always so true. It has little grains of truth, in the sense that the parents, if genuinely they are not able to give time because of their work schedule or the kind of lives they live, then they send it, not because they are not fond of their children or they don't love their children, but because they love their children so much that they're ready to keep them away, so that their development or growth is not hampered, and they get the best of the facilities in one place, and which results in a holistic development. So I look at it that way. Just keeping your child away does not mean you don't love your child. So that is one thing. Family ties weaken, or the children are not too connected with the parents. I think all these things depends entirely on the kind of relationship you have with your child. It's not the quantity, but the quality time that you spend with your children. Even when your children are staying with you, if you are busy the whole day with your work, children are busy with their studies and then games and then their coaching classes, you barely meet. And even your dinner, you're not taking together because the child sleeps early, probably the father comes back home late, so you're not even having meeting at the dinner time, and you're just sleeping. So you are just sharing a house, but you're not actually sharing anything else. So eventually what happens is there are only few times, holidays or sometimes, that we are you are getting together, and the same thing is happening if the child is in the boarding. So I feel that that is a total myth. It all depends on the parents and the child, how they interact and what kind of bonding they have. So bonding should not, it does not get impacted because he is in a residential school. Secondly, some parents feel that the values or traditions of the family can't be transmitted to the child. And again, I would say the same thing. Being in a residential school, the kind of values the students pick up, they cannot do it at home because they are a single child. In the school, companionship, bonding with, you make lifelong friends. You learn to be faithful and loyal in friendships. You become stronger, you become resilient. You realize, because these are the things we try and inculcate in them, that you have to speak for yourself, you have to be strong enough to be able to voice your opinions. So there's so many values and things that we try and teach in a residential school. So it is not that no values are taught or they will forget the traditions of the house. That again, when they are back to their homes during vacations, it's the kind of quality time the parents spend with them. The children will get the best of the school, residential school, as well as the family home and their traditions. Another thing which I hear is people saying कि residential schools में तो बहुत strict होते हैं. Now it's a very vague statement. Strict hona. What is the meaning of strict hona? Strict is an adjective. So you are strict on certain things because that has to be done. The idea is discipline. And discipline does not mean we are punishing. Now, again, discipline, the definition of discipline for them is punishment. It's not punishment. Discipline is the freedom to do what you want, but within a set of rules and regulations in order to achieve something. So this is the most important thing the children learn in a residential school. And if you pick up any book on giving mantras of success, a study has been conducted that if you want to be successful in life, apart from being hardworking, focused, having ambition, everything, the one most magical ingredient for success is discipline. If you are disciplined in body, mind, and spirit, you can achieve anything. And that comes in a residential school, because your entire routine is created in that manner, that right from morning till evening you have a routine which helps your body clock to come into a very regular flow that disciplines you physically. When you are physically disciplined, then you think your mental faculties are also working more in a very systematic manner. and gradually your thought processes and all. So we are trying to inculcate discipline in a very holistic manner in a residential school. Whereas in a day school, probably they are in school for 8 to 9 hours, then they are at home, then they're going to coaching, they're going at different places. So saying that, it's too much of discipline or too much of strictness, I mean, that again, I think it's a myth. It's discipline which is important for each one of us to inculcate. So I think these are the myths that I can think of. If there's any other myth that you are aware of, tell me. I'll debunk that also.
Thank you so much. You have actually thrown light on some very important things that we very commonly hear about residential schools. And I'm so glad you put it in the right perspective to tell people that this is absolutely not true. I mean, even your take on discipline, be it on family traditions, cultures, values. In fact, I should say this about your school because I know a bunch of, my relatives who are actually alumnus of the school. So there is this term that I think that of MGD that is used to address seniors, which is called Jija. And it's so lovely as a term that it's now found place even in our families where older sisters are actually called Jija. So which is actually something that comes from the school. So that's where I think I would say this is a live example of the fact that, in fact, those cultures and traditions are not lost. In fact, we may not realize that there is more impact that is being caused, that is being created in these residential schools. And it's lovely to see how this tradition also finds way in our families. But two other important myths I think I would like you to address is firstly about the emotional well-being of children. I don't know why, and I think it's very unfortunate that people undermine the effort that is being done by institutions like yours and your faculty, to emotionally support the children when they're staying in residential schools. I mean, it's not uncommon to hear people just make these loose statements that, oh, but there's a lot of bullying that happens in residential schools. So I would actually want you to address that part of it, to talk about what are the strict measures that you are taking today, and in fact how your faculty is actually supporting the emotional development of children while they are at school.
See, what you spoke about the word bullying, I think that happens or that may happen anywhere. So it's not limited to residential school. It happens in day schools also. It can happen in general in society, everywhere. So that is one part of it. However, in residential schools, yes, I agree with you that people have this fear that there is some kind of bullying. And I wouldn't say that there is no bullying. Yes, it happens, but time and again we take measures. See, the thing is, how do you deal with emotions? It is only when you go through a certain phase and you feel that emotion, and that is the time you realize that this is what you're going through, and then that is to be addressed in the right manner as to how to tackle it or how to deal with it. And that helps in developing a better EQ, that is emotional quotient. So it's only when you go through experiences in life that you learn. You don't learn just sitting at home cocooned in a very safe environment. So coming out into a residential school, being on your own, facing some experiences, I'm not saying we anyone deliberately creates certain unpleasant experiences, but if at all it happens, there is a system where you have the wardens, the matrons, the house mistress, then you have a counselor, and you have the jijas who are senior who look into it. So there is a system in place where you can address these emotional problems if you have, social problems if you have, and a lot of counseling is done to get out of it, because there is no magic pill that you tell this girl, okay, do this and everything is fine. Obviously it takes a little while, and every child is different. So some children understand faster, they are stronger, genetically they are stronger, they react to certain things in a more mature manner, some don't. So there is a lot of counseling which helps, and they become stronger when they have a good buddy system. So you have a buddy system who's your buddy and who helps you grow. Day in and day out, the teacher can't be sitting with you, but there are good friends who help you get out of an emotional issue if you have. So there are systems in place. If there are little smaller things, then that is taken care of with by the jijas. If it goes a little bigger, then the matrons and wardens coming to house mistress and the counselor if you feel that the child is really going through some emotional trauma. And bullying, we keep talking to the girls about it. And as and when we do find a person bullying, that person also needs counseling, because that child also, she also probably doesn't realize what she's doing and what is the impact of her behavior. So she also through counseling is being taught certain things. So these are things which happen and which are taken care of in a very systematic manner, which in fact may not happen in a day school. Because when I, as I said, we have girls boarders and day scholars. When I get any when I get to know about any issue regarding a boarder, I'm more in control of the situation, because I can talk to that person, to the person who's complained, to the person about whom the complaint is made, about the situation, about other girls, and we can have a proper counseling system. But when it's a day scholar, she complains, she goes back home, then again there is something happening somewhere on the phone or on social media, then they come back to school next day. So you're not even able to deal with that problem so well as you would with the boarders. So I think residential schools can deal with issues. It's not that issues are not there. They are there and they'll be there always, of course. But we are able to deal with it in a more, systematic manner and a more focused manner. So I think that perhaps answers you, gives the answer to your myth.
Yes, it certainly does. And I think the way you put it, ma'am, that was, absolutely right, that these are not only issues that exist in boarding schools, these issues exist everywhere. Right? There's some sort of, I mean, even within families, there's exploitation that can happen. At a day school, also, there is bullying that can happen. Even if you shield the child today, I mean, at the end of the day, they will go to pursue higher education where this fear will also linger. So definitely, I think, one thing, like you said, that, these experiences is what makes you stronger. And it's also about addressing it in a correct fashion. So like you said, through the buddy system that you have at school,
Yeah.
and along with the various escalations you have in school, you sort of ensure that these issues are addressed timely. The other myth I would like you to address is, career support services. So, a lot of people also think that, especially when children are at a very crucial age of like 9, 10th, 11th, 12th, when there's a lot of career guidance, etc., that needs to be given from parent side, it might happen that in a residential school, they may not get that individualized attention. Though my experience is otherwise, because I've been seeing, the kind of robust career counseling departments that, schools are putting in place right now. But I would like you to address that how are you helping your students in helping them find the right careers, especially when they are at that brink of making that important decision?
So, Kritika, yes, I agree with you that what the myths that you are talking about is actually perhaps they have been spouted by parents or people of a little older generation. So, at that time, public schools, the so called public residential schools, had a little different approach, because coming from a background of development of the child, so they were not focusing specifically on certain skills. But last 10-15 years, all the boarding schools have recalibrated themselves because of the changing social norms and looking at the future, what is the requirement of children. So all the schools have a very beautiful career counseling system in place. We have also taken the help of a service provider where each and every child individually is counseled by their resource person along with the parents. So the parent, the child, and the resource person, just three of them sit together and discuss the career things. Then we have so many career workshops. We have an in-house career counselor who's sitting there, and we ourselves organize career counseling sessions even for other schools. We have uh, seminar on careers and on all kinds of careers. It is just to few, all kinds and careers ahead. So place and the career counseling systems are there in place in all the schools.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that effectively
That I know of the all the residential schools. Yes, Kritika?
Yes, I'm saying that thank you so much for, putting that out elaborately and just putting it out very clearly. Because again, like I said, you're right. These are very probably, I'd say, unpopular notions that exist from earlier times, which do not hold much water today because things have transformed completely. Because
Absolutely.
because schools are equally invested in ensuring that students are having good career placements, they're getting good career counseling for them to find the right careers. In fact, sometimes I also feel that schools, because of the professional help like you're saying that they're seeking, they're sometimes in a better place to help students rather than just relying on the parents, because even nowadays things are changing so fast that parents may not have a hold of everything that's happening around them. So that's
Absolutely.
where, getting professionals in the picture actually will widen the horizon of the child a lot more than maybe that would happen at home. So the other thing I'd like to ask
And
you.
in our case, Kritika,
Yes, ma'am.
just one more thing. In our case, we are very much, we are trying to connect with all our ex-MGDians who are placed at wherever different, professions, or even who are working towards a certain profession. So these jijas also, we invite them to talk to the girls, which is again a great motivator for the girls, because when you have a your own jija talking about what to do after 12th, or you can do this, you can do that, it helps a lot. And we have the whole inventory of the ex-MGDians who's where, so then girls can easily approach them and talk to them. So it's career counseling, I don't think it's the last thing that one should be worried about in a residential school. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely true there because, MGD has such a rich legacy and a rich heritage and, such a rich base of alumni. So I'm sure that you find MGDians in every sort of, sphere and in every professional walk of life. So which is actually great that, when you have somebody like them come and talk to the students, I think even the relatability is a lot more because they are able to relate to them at a different level because not like many years ago they were exactly where your current students were right now. So I think that definitely helps. And in fact, you've made a very good point there because this is true of a lot of residential schools in India, because some of the leading residential schools in India again come with a very rich history of legacy. So this is something that definitely stands to their advantage in comparison to newer day schools that are opening today. So, I mean, if I had to now ask you, because you see day boarders as well, and you're seeing your boarders as well. So, what are the advantages of a residential school over a day school? And if there are any disadvantages, then what is it that you see are the disadvantages?
So, Kritika, I think we have discussed a few things about residential schools, and it has been brought out that yes, they are not lagging behind, so to say, the day schools vis-a-vis day school. The main why, if I look at the overall picture, I feel when I think of a residential school, it's a complete holistic development of a child. When I think of day school, it is either a very academic oriented or activity oriented, which is also equally good. I'm not putting down one against the other, but I'm just saying day school can only concentrate on one or two or three aspects of a child's growth, which mainly, of course, priority would always be academics, and then probably activities and few other things. However, residential schools will give you an entire, complete, holistic development, which focuses on academics at the same time, physical development, emotional, social development, and you learn a whole lot of things just by living on the campus with your friends. So it's, and every residential school, like when I talk of my school and the other schools who we are generally in touch with, they're old legacy schools. So over the years, so many students have gone past these schools. So a kind of ethos has been developed, certain ethos in every school. If there are 5 6 students standing, I can easily make out that, oh, you must be a Dosco from Doon school, you must be a Mayoite, oh no, I think you are from Wellams, because there is certain something about all these people. And so this ethos rubs off on all the children who are there. You don't have to teach them something. It's something intangible. You don't have to go and start okay, do this is the tradition. You just imbibe it being in that surroundings or in that atmosphere. So this is something which you may not get in a day school, and this is a lifelong bonding that you develop in a residential school. The kind of relationships you develop in a residential school, it it just stays forever. So I think the activities, dance, drama, sports, everything happens both the sides, but the complete persona is developed in a residential school, I think, which is the biggest advantage.
I think that's very aptly put, ma'am. And you're very accurate in your reading there that, it's so easy to make out because there's certain, like, very, I'd say, characteristic things that you can associate with the various legacy schools that we have in India today, which makes their alumni probably stand out when, they're in a group. And also the fact of camaraderie. I mean, I think what you have been highlighting through your various responses, the kind of camaraderie that you develop with your batchmates, fellow batchmates, with your alumni, it's very, very strong in comparison to the kind of camaraderie you have with your friends at a day school. And that is something I think, all of us might know through our acquaintances or relatives. We do know somebody who's been to residential schools, and I think we have all seen that happen. So that's absolutely true. Now, on this conversation today, I also have certain parents also who join me in this group. So for their benefit, I would want to pose this particular question to you, that, for parents who are looking at admitting their children in residential schools, firstly, what is the right age for them to admit students into a boarding school? And second, we all know every child is unique, every child is different. So how can a parent sort of determine if their child is suited for a residential school? Like you said, being in a residential school makes you independent. You're largely self-dependent. So how do we make out that, okay, this is a child which probably would flourish at a residential school, and probably this is a child who needs to probably be at home in a much more secure and comfortable environment?
Kritika, I would look at it in a slightly different manner. I would not ask uh, when we should put our child in the school, in a residential school, or what kind of children should go to residential school. I would look at it this way: what is it the parent is looking for? What does the parent want? How does the parent want to see his or her child at the age of 18 or 21? What is the parent expecting of the child? So looking at that, and then you decide whether you want to send your child to a residential school and at what age. So when you talk of age, like maybe in class 1 and 2, they are too young. Probably class 4 and 5 would be the right age. However, from personal experience, I can say this was in my previous school in class. There was a girl who joined in class 2. The reason that the parents were going through a very messy divorce and there were family issues and everything. So she was sent to the boarding house. And of course, in the beginning, she was very morose and not happy and all that. But within 15, 20 days, 1 month, because they are small children, so they get over things faster. So within 1 month, she blended in the hostel. There were less girls in the junior section, but still, and she didn't want to go back home. So she was very happy there. Now, here in her case, I would say it was better she was kept away from that ugliness of the divorce. And after 3, 4, 5 years, when things got sorted out between the parents, either they amicably parted or they were together. But She didn't have to see that what was happening in the home at home, because otherwise it would have impacted her. So in her case, yes, class 2, it was the right decision of the parents to send her to a boarding so that she doesn't see all this. In some cases, maybe it is class 4. So class 4 or class 6, or some of them feel that till class 8, they are too young. I want my child to be with me, and then from ninth. So I don't say that which is the right age. I wouldn't say that. I think it is what the parents want and how the children take it. The next part you said, what kind of children? I think again, you can't decide whether the child will be suitable. I mean, you don't uh, pick up a child and say you are suited for residential school or not. I mean, it's like you send a child to a school. You don't when the child starts going to school, you don't decide कि ये school के लिए suited है तब मैं भेजूं कि नहीं भेजूं. You automatically send a child to a school. So residential school also, it's not whether the child is suited or not. Yes, once the child is in the residential school, and then probably you get to know that yes, he or she is really, really, taking that the hostel like a fish takes to water. Some take longer. Some, for whatever reason, are not able to adjust, and they leave the hostel. So beforehand, the parent can't decide whether my child is suited or not, because I have seen all kinds of children coming and a lot of parents having a lot of doubts, but they are themselves surprised to see that they would say that, ma'am, I thought she was insisting she wants to go to the hostel. I thought 3-4 महीने रहेगी फिर अपने आप ही बोलेगी मुझे आना है. But now she doesn't want to leave. She is so well adjusted. So they are themselves surprised to see that. So you can't, take anything for granted that this child is suitable or not. If you want to look, you're looking for a certain kind of a growth for your child, for a certain kind of a thing, or maybe you are in an area where you don't have the right kind of schools, day schools. So then you want, so it's all a whole lot of factors which affect, which should be taken into account while deciding on the residential school. And that's what I feel.
I think that's a very good lens for parents and students to sort of follow to decide that, when they're taking that decision of going to residential schools. And I'm so happy that you also shared that example of the child who, as early as class 2, was put into residential school to sort of avoid, the child being in this kind of an emotionally disturbing environment, which could actually scar the child for life. So actually, it was a good decision if one looks back in hindsight to have the child, move out of that ecosystem and actually go into a happier ecosystem until things settle down. In fact, I think, especially in times like COVID, I'm glad we are speaking about this because a lot of families are having a difficult time that we've been reading about. So, in those situations, it's very difficult for children to grow in a healthy manner, both mentally as well as physically. So in those situations, I think it's a good idea for them to probably consider moving to a residential school for things to get sorted and then sort of come back, because their memories, after all, should be of a happy home. That's most important.
Yes.
So I think I'm so glad that, we actually spoke about this, because I think this is, a time where a lot of people are going through a difficult time. So,
and also, Kritika, when they are interacting with other girls, they realize that everyone has some problem or the other. It's not they themselves. So when you share your problems, when you talk about your family histories, you realize life is like that. This is the reality of life, that we do have issues, we have problems, but we have to learn to face it. And by the time you leave the hostel, you are strong enough to understand your problems which your family may be facing. So you will be looking at it with more maturity rather than with too much of unnecessary sentimentality, that how do you go about it and all those things. So you are strong and resilient enough to face all kinds of challenges.
correct. And like I think you said earlier, I mean, it's only our exposure that makes us stronger. And when we share with others, we realize that something, otherwise, you tend to put yourself in a cocoon and you feel that, the world and God is just being unfair to you and has imposed all these burdens and problems on you. But when you start discussing with others, you kind of realize that, this is also the reality of the lives of many others, and people do have problems of various degrees in their life, and you're no one special. So it definitely makes you more resilient. I think this conversation.
So there are so many examples I can give you. I can remember so many. There were two sisters who joined together. One sister, I mean, they were just 1 year apart. One sister did not stay even for 2 days. She went back. The other sister stayed for 6 years, and she's still in touch with me. There was this boy who joined in my previous school in class 4. For 1 month, every day he cried throughout in the class. He used to keep crying, wanted to go back. He passed out in class 12th as the head boy. So,
Wow.
things happen in such a way. You can't say that this child is suited or not suited or what. So, there's so much change which happens in a child.
Absolutely. I think that's a day, right? For them, every day is like a new growth phase. I mean, they're going
New
through
growth.
something
Absolutely.
new every day. I mean, I'd like to thank you, Archana ma'am, for being so candid, being so honest with us in this conversation. Because I think, the idea of this platform is this, that, give a platform where educators can actually, bear their heart out in terms of their experiences, and we can take those conversations to people so that they realize the amount of effort each one of you are making in your institutions to make sure that you're looking after the future, the mental, the well-being of the children that are coming to your institutions today. So I'd really like to thank you for taking out the time for actually very patiently sort of answering each question and answering it in detail, which I really hope is a step in the right direction. And people now stop, holding on to these myths that no longer exist, because it's obviously a very different world out there. And we have a lot of committed educators like yourself who are making sure that our children are comfortable, well taken care of, and are making sure that they turn out to be well rounded citizens of this country. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out the time to join us.
Thank you, Kritika. It's always such fun talking to you, and I'm so happy to see such a young person talking with so much of maturity and taking things forward. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And a big thank you to all our viewers for joining us and for sending us so many positive comments about this conversation. It's all this encouragement that keeps us going. And we're going to be back again on next Thursday at 5 p.m., where we're going to be talking about the new board examination pattern. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you on next Thursday. Thank you. Take care, everybody.